I would be a clinician and a business leader, optimizing, able to be, addressing problems at health system level, but at the same time being able to provide patient care. And I'm using AI to, solve problems quickly in my clinic, to be able to, set vision for health system improvement using AI. I think this will be something that will make me happy and thrilled, and there will be no inefficiencies that I need to deal with that will be holding me miserable and feeling burnout. So I'm on that mission to kind of, even if I'm not going to be practicing that specifically, is I want to make future of medicine more enjoyable and fulfilling by improving workflows for physicians and clinicians.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Alaa Youssef, who is the Chief of AI and Engineering at basys.ai. Alaa, thank you so much for being here today on the podcast.
Of course, happy to be here. Thanks.
I'm excited to have this conversation. I know we had a bit of a longer one since when we spoke the first time. So why don't we start off with you just telling everyone a little bit more about yourself, but also a little bit more about basys.ai, who you guys are and who you help.
Yeah, so thanks for the kind introduction, for having me on. So I'm Alaa Youssef. My basis has been not basis the company, but my basis has been growing up in Toronto and just actually going through York University and UFT to complete my medical degree, and I got really interested in problems related to healthcare and recognized the failure of healthcare as a business model, and how important principles from business translate into solving real problems in healthcare and healthcare delivery. I completed my PhD at the University of Toronto in population health and data science, and I did my postdoctoral fellowship at Stanford. Starting in 2021 until recently when I joined Basis as the chief of AI and engineering. And in my current role at Basis, I lead AI development and deployment, focusing on the use of generative AI to improve utilization management, prior authorization in healthcare. And this was really an important uh, problem, is because according to the American Medical Association,
Mm,
um, 90% of physician experience burnout because of tedious and inefficient operations in
mm,
healthcare related to documentation,
yep.
medical billing, all of those kind of
Hmm.
information. And it just truly, generative AI has been transformative in terms of the world in general and how organizations are scaling. But there's no industry that is more needing of scaling of generative
Hmm.
AI as healthcare.
Yeah. So much admin.
Yeah,
So much
exactly.
admin. Right?
Exactly. So Basis is a company, as a startup company that Amber Nigam, the co-founder of it, founded it 3 years ago. Been working with him closely. We share data science passion and problem solving, and it was really exciting to join in 2025 to to lead the effort there. So I lead an engineering team, and in that scale we work a lot. And I also think the part of my role that I really love is it merges between clinical business as well as engineering. So I
Mm,
work on technical problems, I work with the clinical teams and the clinical experts, and I work with Amber, Arpin, Sexna, and others, the leadership to on the business development. And
mhm.
so just like it's a really a great combination of three different factors.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great. And talk to me a little bit more about the people who are really benefiting from Basis. So, of course, you mentioned physicians themselves, but is it the clinics? Is it certain institutions? Who are these people that you guys are really working closely together with?
Mhm. So, this is a really great question. I think we serve broadly three main, components. There's provider, there's payers, but the ultimate beneficiary of this is patients.
Mm,
So, I think there's a bad, reputation for, there's a, not a bad reputation. I would take this back. It's just like, uh, it's just generally known that, you know, there's very little transparency on how decision and medical decision making related to billing does happen in healthcare.
mm,
And the goal for Basis, and really this is something that admire me about Basis and Amber's vision, is how do we really bring the transparency to the patient and the physician, which is
Mhm.
we're not just, we're taking the policies, we are helping the payers process that, but rather than just having, human error, delays, and just inconsistency, we're actually addressing this by using AI to drive things in a consistent and more reliable way.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's a really cool, this is a really important part because we often underestimate the bias and subjectivity on human side and how we operate and how these, tasks are being processed.
Mhm.
And so we're serving both payers and providers, and as well, the ultimate beneficiaries are the patients. So we're hoping to ensure that there's nothing that is being denied that is that's not worth, let me recap this. But uh,
No, we don't have to. We can keep it going. It's all good. I like it, and I'll say this. I often think, and I'm not sure if you're a big consumer of podcasts. Are you or no?
I am.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the entire raw conversation because I think that's where we always get the most value from because every single interaction that we have with a person, be it in person, be it virtually now, which technology nowadays sounding like an old person, right?
Yes.
But I think it's so great because it's the real raw conversation, the truth of what's actually happening in the back end. So I'm always happy to cut things out, as I said, but I actually really like and enjoy the interactions that happen naturally free flowing. So go ahead.
Awesome. Okay. So let me give you a quick summary. So um, the way I would capture this is, imagine, I think Basis is on a mission to transform workflow for healthcare,
Mm,
and improve patient outcomes. And how do we do that? Um, I want you to imagine going to visit and see if a physician. Generally, once you see a physician, the physician takes notes, the tedious notes that's now with generative AI are being transformed to be, audio, audio written notes that are generally transcribed in minutes. This is just speeding things up. So here's
yeah.
one perk of generative AI really transforming that component. We have seen a lot of innovation in that space already happening and being deployed. And then
Mhm,
you have that information as well being used for, the physician is making sure his notes capture specific information that are required for health payers to be able to reimburse
mhm,
those claims. And so it's very important to have that accuracy. So, you imagine you're going to see your doctor for, knee pain or, some sort of an injury. The physician needs to capture specific information for the payer to be able to reimburse this physician. And
mhm,
so what happens is a problem actually that people don't know about is providers don't have the key guide into what is the necessary information that is required for a payer to approve this
mm,
claim. This
hmm,
information is locked in the policy, and the policy is with the payer. So generally, the physician described the necessary information that needs to be in there. But sometimes, if you're automating this and you're not having, if your AI is just like, it's a strictly a binary of zero or one. So let's say, for example, it needs to say the patient had acute injury within the last 24 hours. If it does not
okay.
say this, then it could be with automation that it would not accept this
Mm,
as a valid meeting as a validity of that criteria, compared to when you are using models that have reasoning and that are able to pull that patient recorded, falling at that time in their history of why they're seeing the physician is like they're seeing physician because of an injury. It can even escalate those cases for human review to make sure it's
mm,
not denying a case that should not be denied.
mhm.
Um,
Interesting. And is there I'm curious to hear, is there a pushback from the clinicians, the physicians, the institutions to because of this? Because I think sometimes the transparency is so good, and could be just my ignorance on this, but the transparency is so good for the patients because they can reimburse in certain situations or pay I guess I'll call it the right amount, right?
mhm.
But maybe a clinician or an institution they can look at it as like, oh, this is less revenue coming in for me. So it's not as beneficial as it would be for the patients. Do you find that to be a common pushback or no?
So the interesting component is that there's something called risk adjustment. And with risk
Okay.
adjustment is you're trying healthcare. So here's the business problem from its duality, which is health systems are trying to optimize for overbilling because or billing right amount of billing, that's called overbilling, because they want for the service that they're providing to get the maximum amount of care, sorry,
Mhm.
the maximum amount of return on investment, or
Yep.
finances. And on the other side, you have the payer who's trying actually to optimize for the minimum.
Yep.
I'm trying to optimize for what I minimum, and that's why CMS conducts something called risk adjustment validation, which is running an audit, on a sample of cases, to ensure that within any of those services,
Mhm.
health services has been billing patients for what they should be billed for and not
Mhm.
overestimating. So
Mm.
that actually puts, so here's where the guardrail from a policy perspective sets
Mhm.
that control, because you don't want to be
Interesting.
underbilling or overbilling.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So there's it balances things out.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
That's very
Yeah, and
go ahead.
then the other aspect of it is, use the payer. Usually, if there's no AI, what will happen is it's going to go to the payer. There is human reviewers. Human reviewers are doing their best, but did you know that at least if it's a very simple claim, it can take a nurse reviewer 30 minutes to review this. It takes an AI
Mm.
3 minutes or less than three
Mhm.
minutes to get a complete decision end to
Mhm.
end. And so rather than having, a patient, imagine if this is for a procedure related to a surgery or related to something
Mhm.
that's time sensitive and critical. You want the patient to be able to know ahead of time if something is going to be denied or not.
Mhm.
And so, or accepted by their health plan or not.
Sure.
And if a physician can provide essential information that can facilitate the process, you want to do this as quick as possible to get back to the patient. So,
Mhm.
what AI does is with AI, you are digesting the policies into a format, and
Mm.
you are using the clinical record to be able to see whether the information that the provider has provided addresses and meets the policy criteria.
Hmm.
One,
Interesting.
yeah,
Is how much of a concern is the accuracy of the reports as well? Because I think for especially healthcare, because there's such a I don't want to say it's held back in time, but it's one of the industries that is so old, right? Because so it's so old, so that they tend to be a little bit more hesitant to adapt new things, develop new technologies, or start to implement them, right? So, is there a lot of hesitancy or concerns when it comes to the accuracy of the reports and the things that will be happening from potential customers for you guys?
of course, accuracy is the number one priority for all of our customers, and that's
Mhm.
why it's important to for us at Basis to adopt transparency as not as an option, but as a core competency, because
Mm.
um, AI is a black box, and no one is. So something I didn't know until from actually from a friend, which was in electric and simulation cars and cars that uses algorithms, you actually don't use a lot of generative AI because you want to have as much control of your
Mhm.
inputs and outputs. And so similar way of controlling for that is you're
Mm.
trying as much as possible, but the problem with healthcare is the problem is very complex. The
Mm.
problems is you have a lot of data, and many of it we as humans have not studied its patterns or understood its patterns. So we leverage from the deep learning algorithms, we leverage from the large language models, we leverage from those
Mhm.
kind of models. The the question becomes, how do you evaluate, how do you ensure you have the proper guardrails, and how do you ensure you have the transparency to report if something went wrong, and as well to
Mm.
allow the consumer to see, I have trust in this product,
Mhm.
because I can see why the AI has generated this decision, and
Yeah.
if my reviewers are doing the same thing, they will also come to a similar decision. And
Mhm.
so
And then everybody's on the same
exactly.
page.
So from a business aspect, transparency is building that trust component with customers, and that component is crucial for
Mm.
you as a startup or as a company to
Hmm.
succeed in industry.
That's very, very cool. Oh, that's awesome because it creates, a same level playing field for everybody, and it makes sure that all decisions are being made with the right information. So they're informed decisions as opposed to just, "Hey, I think it's this," or "I think it's this," and then there's, like, people butting heads. That's awesome. And when it comes to the process of educating potential customers on what you guys are providing, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges to making sure that they understand the value that comes from this so that they actually can be bought in?
So we always have demos, and I think we try. So here's a business problem that is interestingly um, entangles with technical, where you want to be able to customize, but you also want to be generalizable to an extent so you can scale.
Yeah.
How do you solve for that problem? Well, you need to be able to optimize for the general problem solving of a problem. So, for example, prior authorization can happen with different customers. And what happens with the different customers is, um, you know, they can have different threshold on when they would want something to be secondary or human reviewed or not. So here is where you can customize. Here is where you're going to set a threshold where if I'm not achieving this level of accuracy, I need to flag this for human review for this customer.
Mm,
And so that's the important part of, where do you optimize to build that? And we always start with a demo where we're showing completely in transparency. This is the engine, this is the platform, this is how
mhm,
things are going to be processed. But importantly, you have different use case problems. If I'm working with a prescriber that is working on pharmacy claims, prescriptions, it's going to be different than an imaging. It's going to be
of
different than
course.
so this is where also you have different use cases and different ways to kind of address that. But
Mm,
just to kind of like bring it all back together, it's just like you need to think about if you have, um, um, so if you want to see that, at one aspect of it is you have three decisions or four decisions to make, and you have the input from the patient record and you have the policy. And what you want to
mm,
show to your customer is the way I map the policy to the patient record. This is exactly what is being met. This is what is not met. Therefore,
mm,
the decision is X, Y, or Z. And you
mm,
allow the customer to have the higher power to say, yes, I agree with AI. I should approve this. No, I do not agree. And here's my
mhm,
reason. And this reason gets
mm,
ingested back. Or you get to see um, you get to see that this is escalated for secondary review. And it's important
mhm.
to know that AI is not going to solve everything because there will
Yeah,
still remain percentages of cases that are very complex that require human nurse
of
expertise.
course.
And I want to say that, really at basis working with nursing experts and clinicians, and you get to understand the value and huge impact of human expertise in terms of how they make decisions and judgment on something that's sitting on a gray line between a denial
Mhm,
and an approval. This is not
mhm.
really an easy call to make. And this information is not present in many of the general knowledges that you would encounter. So, hope this provide
Yeah.
a perspective. But I know it's a bit complex, but hope this.
No, but it's cool. No, it's cool to understand because I think it kind of this might be a terrible analogy, but I think it ties into what so many people say, like, "Oh, AI is going to replace everybody, it's gonna take everyone's job." I don't think that's true because I think AI is going to or people that are really good at using AI and, developing that skill set is going to kind of dominate the market, and same with what you're mentioning there. Of course, there are some times where it's going to be very, very accurate, but there are also times where it's such a specific situation that there has to be some human implementation to it. So it's the human, the physician, the clinician who is able to assess all of that information and then compile that and then make the right decision that is going to outperform the ones that do not have the same tools, which is very, very cool. And I have a couple final questions here for you, Ala. One is a question that I've been asking everybody. So I'll ask you this question first. And it is if you had let's say you had a magic wand and you could just wave this great wand and it would solve one thing in the business that would make your goals, your targets, all these things just very easy to achieve. The thing is, this one thing cannot be just like, oh, I'll take $1 billion. I would take $1 billion too. Something that you control, something that is a challenge, an obstacle, something in the business that you guys may that may be a hurdle for you. What's that one thing that you would want to get rid of so that you can achieve all those goals for the business?
Uh, this is this is a good question. This is a challenging one.
That's why I ask it.
uh, so something I get rid of. Uh,
Something, it's not getting rid of, maybe something to fix, a problem to solve, anything that would allow those growth goals, those targets to be achieved, but not just in La La Land, like, "Oh, yeah, I'll take the billion." I would as well, like I said, but, something that's usually in your control.
um, I think I would. Um, so this is something I learned deeply from my um, mentor at Stanford,
Okay.
Dr. David Larson. He's a radiologist and vice president of the chair department of radiology. When I work with him in the lab, in the aid lab, and we focus a lot on quality improvement. And something I have seen and witnessed its impact in clinical workflows is QC. So
Mm,
QC is really important. So I would eliminate inefficiencies that are not needed by understanding where the sources are the efficiencies and problem solving for those inefficiencies, because this is what makes teams scale. This is what makes teams succeed. And so I actually, even in my workflow basis, I started with understanding what are the number one barriers for me to be communicating with my engineers, with my
mhm,
technical teams, with leadership, with project management, in order to ensure you're able to really have that direct communication that allows you to, not have barriers in between you and your communication and
mhm,
deliverables. Because let's face it, even I have heard this in 100 podcasts, the number one barrier is project management and communication. And if we can solve
mm,
this, I think we are going to improve every single industry, including healthcare, which is really
mm.
turbulent communication.
Interesting, and when you say, just as a final question on that, when you say communication, do you mean internal or also external communication? So for possible clients, prospects?
I think on both sides. You need to do
Mm,
this on both sides. The world is still busy, and everyone is trying to optimize for maximum efficiency on both sides. But I think it's
mhm,
important to maintain communication that ensures you're building repertoire and trust with external clients,
mm.
and you're
Yep,
building team relationship. So it's important to address problems because it's just not a barrier for you to get through a task. It
yeah,
damages the team dynamics. And so
mm,
how can you build efficient teams is your actually economic wheel to your success in any org.
awesome. I like that. I like that. Very, very cool. I like that answer. And then the final question that I have here for you, it's not a question from me actually. It's a question from my last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were.
Wow, this is a cool one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the question. This is an interesting one. I like this question, so I will ask it right now. Here it is. If you had to live the same day every day until you're 80 years old, what would it have to look like so you love it? And so you sorry, what would it have to look like so you loved what you accomplish and also who you've become?
Mm, this is a
An
really
interesting question.
tough one.
Yeah,
Um, so in an ideal fantasy world,
of course.
um, I would be a clinician, and a business leader, optimizing, able to be, addressing problems at health system level, but at the same time being able to provide patient care. And I'm using AI to, you know, solve problems quickly in my clinic, to be able to, set vision for health system improvement using AI. I think this will be something that will make me happy and thrilled, and there will be no inefficiencies that I need to deal with that will be holding me miserable and feeling
Mm,
burnout. So I'm on that mission to kind of, even if I'm not going to be practicing that specifically, is I
mm,
want to make future of medicine more enjoyable and fulfilling by improving workflows for physicians and clinicians.
That's
And I
awesome.
really also do this in education where I really care about workforce development and training, and I scale this through medical education initiatives at Stanford, University of Toronto, even in here in business, because I believe, everyone is really stressed out about what is future of job market going to look like. And I think we get to shape this with AI together now rather than
Mhm.
just be sitting to wait what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I really like that answer, and especially as someone who also was, close to some, like, doctors, people in the health industry, and how stressful it can become because of so many million things, so I really like that answer. Ala, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, being on the podcast. This has been a great conversation. Where should people go if they wanna learn a little bit more about yourself or a little bit more about Basis AI?
Yeah, so they should go to LinkedIn and please connect on LinkedIn and as well as the company's website. But best ways to reach me on my LinkedIn profile.
Sounds good. I will, of course, leave everything here down below. If you're
Great.
still watching until now and you wanna hear more conversations like this, please
I
subscribe,
really enjoyed the
and
conversation. Thank you for hosting it.
sounds good. Will you subscribe as well?
I'm
And I will
subscribing.
see you.
Yes.
Sounds good. And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.